Hello, it's Tim from Fair Play Now on the 12th of March 2023. I want to talk about, of all things, and bear with me, this will become obvious, although it might not seem very relevant, but I want to talk about safe isolation of supply. Now, if you don't know, if you're newer to this channel, I'm a sparky by trade and electrician, and pretty much the first thing they teach you at electrician school when you first set out, alongside Ohm's law of course, is safe isolation of supply. And that is making sure that the electrical supply is completely switched off before you start working on components. And there is a set procedure, laid down by the regulations, whereby you use a proper tester, not just one of those silly screwdriver things that lights up, or even a volt stick, but a proper sort of pair of probes with a wire in between to link, and you sort of put the probes on the live parts of whatever it is you're working on. Well, what you're supposed to do is first of all put them on while the thing's still live, and then you get some lights that light up to tell you the thing is live, that you've got your sort of 230, 240 volts going through, and then you go and switch off, and then you sort of put the sort of probes back on your live parts, and this time nothing should light up. You shouldn't get anything at all, not even a peep. And then what you're supposed to do is actually put your probes onto, obviously not the thing you're working on, but something else which is still live, that you know is live, and put it on, and then you should see the lights sort of turning on. The idea behind that is to make sure that in that short period of time your tester hasn't broken and gave you some kind of false reading. And then you kind of lock off the sort of isolator or the sort of breaker, whatever it is, and then you know 100% for sure that you can start fiddling on with the sort of wires, etc., without getting an electric shock. Now, what you don't do, is just take someone else's word for it that the thing's off. You don't sort of listen to someone saying, "Oh yeah, don't worry, mate. Yeah, I've switched it all off for you. You can work on that perfectly safely." And then you're like, "Oh, all right, mate, thanks." And then you start sort of working away, touching wires, contacts, and everything, and ow, oh. Thought you said it was turned off, mate. Well, that is the wrong way of doing it, of doing things. Now, you might think, what's relevance to this compared to what I normally talk about? Well, I suppose if you're really switching on, no pun intended, you may already be getting this, but I think one thing that distinguishes the likes of you and me from what seems to be like the vast majority of people out there over the last 3 years is we're not the type of people to just take what we're told for granted without doing our, well, what you call an equivalent to the safe isolation of supply procedure. You don't just listen to the government and say, oh, there's a sort of a lurgy floating around. You need to lock down. You need to get the V. You need to muzzle up. You need to stand 6 feet apart. You don't just take that line down and obey whatever diktats they come out without asking some questions. With the 6 foot apart thing, you might sort of start asking the question, well, why is that necessary? Why is it not 5 foot or 7 foot? Why is it 6 foot? Where did you get that figure from? Well, don't ask questions like that. Trust the science, trust the science. No, I am going to do my own verification, thank you very much. Just like when I'm working as a Sparky, I'm going to do my own verification to make sure the circuit is safely isolated before I work on it. I'm not just going to take someone's word for it, and especially when important decisions are being made and I'm being asked to do things which can just gravely impact my life. It's like the whole V thing. Where's this thing come from? Why have you managed to rush it through so quickly when normally these things take a good 5 to 10 years to come through? And how do you know it's safe? How do you know it's effective? Well, sorry, again, I'm not going to take your word for it. I'm going to do my own due diligence and I'm going to find out for myself whether this thing's any good or not. And that, in common with many people, or most people watching this channel, is what I did, is what I went out and did. And I think kind of the impression I get from the viewers I've met, at least, and many others who've left comments, etc., is I think one or two themes that makes us all have common attributes is we all seem to be sort of practical people, down-to-earth people, naturally skeptical people who just won't accept what we're told without looking into things a bit more deeply. And I think this is one of the things that has differentiated us from the majority of people. So that is possibly one thing that has kind of separated us out from that all of the others. And I keep circling back to this: what makes us, what has made us so different to everybody else? And I think that is one of the explanations. We're more practical, perhaps. We're not, and we certainly ask awkward questions, and we're not afraid to do so. And we're not going to just accept things as gospel without doing our own sort of research and looking into things a bit further beforehand. And isn't it funny how so many people who normally do that, they research endlessly for, let's say, their next new car, and yet that kind of person eagerly went out and got a certain thing in there without doing any research whatsoever, even though it might have been one of the most important things with the highest amount of consequence that they were ever asked to do. And actually, while we're on the subject of cars, and I might actually sound like that bloke, Jeff Buys Cars, he runs this channel which started off by being a car channel, but has ended up talking about the same kind of things I do. So at the risk of sounding a bit like him, I've found that instead of doing endless research into cars, if you want to buy a new one, if you want to know what a good car is, just look at the kind of people who use cars or vans all the time, and rely on their living from the choice of car or van that they make. So if you want to know what a good car to buy is, just look at what taxi companies use. If you want to know what a good van is to buy, look at what kind of courier firms use. So if, for instance, you're in the market for your next car, well, go down to your local taxi ranks, see what sort of cars they mainly use, which are things like Ford Mondeos, Skoda Octavias, and Citroen Berlingo multi-spaces, which is what I've got actually. I've gone for that latter one. And you only need to look at what people are using to, people who rely on these things for their living are using, to automatically know what a good choice is. So Yeah, I've diverged from what I was saying initially, but that is a very practical way of making a car buying decision without taking the word of, well, the manufacturers or even car reviewers, or taking the word of sort of hearsay or whatever it might be. You have got a very practical way of telling what a good car to buy is. So, kind of all in a roundabout way, my usual roundabout way, sort of comes back to the same thing really. It's all a question of using very practical means to discover what may or may not be going on. So that is a bit of a ramble today, but hope it makes sense. And just a couple of things before I finish. A couple of very eagle-eyed people yesterday spotted a slight problem I've got here in my left eye. Nothing to worry about, but probably 2, 3, maybe 4 times a year I get these little eye bleeds, which makes either sort of half of the white of my eye, one side of the pupil go completely red, or sometimes on both sides of the pupil, so the whole of the eye or the white of the eye goes red. So it looks a bit ghoulish, but doesn't affect my sight at all, completely painless. And in fact, with this one, I didn't even know I had it until Lorraine told me I had another one. So absolutely nothing to worry about. And they normally go within about 2 or 3 days as well. So probably by midweek, it'll be totally gone. So thanks for your concern anyway, for those who noticed it. And just a last word as well on the event we had in Milton Keynes, Stony Stratford, just outside Milton Keynes there last week. A fantastic event, and I think everybody who went thoroughly enjoyed it. Did have a little bit of constructive feedback on it, which is always welcome. And although everybody really liked the event, I think some people were saying that maybe the next one could be a little bit more informal, rather than just people sitting around tables for pretty much the whole event. It might be an idea to do something a little bit more informal. I plan on doing something exactly the same as that again, probably in the autumn, but maybe in the meantime, during the summer, maybe we could do some kind of camping event, which is going to the total opposite end of the scale, just a totally informal gathering of like-minded souls over a weekend. I do know of a campsite that's owned and run by an awake person, very local to me, which we could possibly use. I'm not too far from Gatwick Airport, so it's quite accessible for many people. So that might be a possibility. And maybe at some point in, I don't know, maybe June or the later part of July, we could sort of meet up there and have a weekend get together. You could either come down just for one night, a Saturday night, or maybe we could do a 2-night one, Friday and Saturday night. So let me know in the comment section below, or by emailing me, tim@fairplaynow.net, if you'd be interested in that kind of thing. And if I get enough interests, maybe I will start looking into it a bit further. But with that said, I'm going to leave it, and I'll be back tomorrow. Tim from Fair Play Now, thanks for watching.